Have you ever looked at your paycheck, seen the numbers add up, and still felt strangely poor? You're working, you're earning, you're doing what you were told, yet somehow the feeling of being behind never really leaves. Here's the paradox. Many people who feel poor aren't actually short on income. They're short on something quieter, something harder to see, and it keeps whispering, "You should be further by now." Flirting this. Your income rises, your apartment gets a little nicer, your phone a little newer. But instead of relief, the finish line moves. Comfort becomes normal. Normal becomes invisible. According to surveys, households earning well above the median still report financial stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction. Not because bills are crushing them, but because expectations quietly inflated alongside their income. At running on a treadmill surrounded by highlight reels, Evos looks faster, richer, calmer, and somehow already there. So what if the feeling of poverty isn't about money at all? What if it's about the lens you're using to measure your life, and how that lens keeps resetting what enough means? Let's break down how this happens, piece by piece.
1. You wake up, check your bank account, and nothing looks wrong.
Money came in, bills are paid, yet there's a dull pressure in your chest telling you that you're still not doing well enough. You earn money, but it never translates into relief. Instead of feeling stable, you feel late, like everyone else started the race earlier and you're jogging just to keep them in sight. You tell yourself you should be grateful. After all, you have a job. But with a quiet thought that keeps returning, why does it still feel this hard? The strange part is that the feeling doesn't disappear with raises or promotions. The numbers improve, but the sensation stays exactly the same. It's like pouring water into a cup with a hole you can't see. No matter how much flows in, it never quite fills, and you start assuming the problem must be you. This is where most people stop questioning. They accept the feeling as normal and assume the solution is simply to try harder. 2. When the feeling won't go away, your mind looks for a reason. And the easiest explanation is also the most punishing one. I must be bad with money. Then replay purchases in your head, the coffee, the subscription, the one small splurge. It feels logical to blame spending habits because at least that gives you something concrete to fix. Treff harder, track everything, cut more. If you just had more discipline, the anxiety would finally disappear. But here's the problem: feel poor. They know exactly where every dollar goes, and yet the tightness never loosens. The explanation sounds responsible, even mature, but it quietly misses the real cause. It treats the symptom while ignoring the pattern underneath. So you keep tightening the rules, turning money into a source of constant self-judgment. And when the feeling doesn't improve, you don't question the explanation, you question yourself. 3. Here's where things get uncomfortable. That feeling of being poor doesn't fade at a certain income level. It follows you upward. Please earning modest wages feel it. So do people making 6 figures. Different numbers, same emotional weight sitting on their shoulders. Be a magic threshold where the anxiety stops. But every time income increases, life quietly expands to meet it. A bigger place becomes normal. A nicer car becomes expected. What once felt like success slowly turns into the new baseline. Psychologists call this adaptation, but it feels more like a trap. Relief never arrives because the standard keeps moving. So the pattern forms without you noticing. No matter how much you earn, enough stays just out of reach. That's when people start wondering if financial peace is even real, or if feeling behind is simply the permanent cost of adulthood.
4. There's a force shaping your money feelings that almost never shows up in spreadsheets. It doesn't care about your budget, your savings rate, or your income. Comparison works quietly. You don't wake up planning to do it. It happens in passing, scrolling, conversations, casual comments that stick longer than they should. Someone your age buys a house. Someone else travels constantly. Your perfectly fine life feels suspiciously small. The dangerous part is how comparison resets the meaning of enough. What once felt like comfort now feels like barely keeping up. You're not measuring your life against your past anymore. You're measuring it against a rotating highlight reel of other people's best moments. And because there's always someone ahead, the pressure never shuts off. No matter how far you go, the finish line keeps drifting further away. At some point, a quiet thought breaks through the noise.
What if the problem isn't your income at all? You start noticing something strange. On days you compare less, your money feels lighter. Nothing changed in your bank account, but something shifted in how you interpreted it. That's the realization most people never articulate. You don't feel poor because of the numbers. You feel poor because of perspective. The same income can feel like freedom or failure depending on the lens you use. Comparison distorts that lens until everything looks smaller than it really is. Once you see this, it's unsettling, because it means earning more won't automatically fix the feeling. It also means the solution isn't purely financial, permissible, and that makes it both harder and more powerful to change.
6. Living in that distorted perspective isn't neutral. It quietly charges interest on your emotional life every single day. Shame creeps in first. You wonder why you can't feel satisfied when others seem so comfortable. Blazing. Then comes envy, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the silent version. The kind that makes you smile for people while feeling smaller inside. Over time, anxiety becomes background noise. Not panic, just a constant hum that never fully shuts off. Money stops being a tool and turns into a mirror. Every balance, every purchase, every decision feels like a good point to the end of them. Every time you something check, they never claim you on the life. Notice every bit of a good side. Money stops being a tool and turns into a worth. You assume you're failing quietly while everyone else has it figured out. That's the real cost. Not just financial stress, but the emotional weight of believing you're always behind. 7. The shift doesn't start with earning more. It starts with changing what you pay attention to. You notice how often your mood changes after certain comparisons. A scroll, a conversation, a passing thought, and suddenly your life feels smaller. So you begin pulling your focus back. Not dramatically, not perfectly, just intentionally. You stop measuring your progress against curated versions of other people's lives. Photos, posts, and milestones chosen specifically to impress. Instead, you compare yourself to something quieter. Your past self, your actual values, your real trade-offs. The change feels subtle, almost underwhelming at first. Deflate, but the emotional pressure starts to loosen. Nothing about your income changes overnight. Yet for the first time in a long while, enough feels possible. Once comparison loosens its grip, a different definition of wealth starts to form. Not louder, not flashier, just more honest. You realize wealth isn't about how impressive your life looks from the outside. It's about how aligned it feels on the inside. Months to support your priorities instead of arguing with them. Your spending reflects what actually matters to you, not what signals success to others. A smaller life can feel rich when it buys time, calm, and choice. A bigger income can feel empty when it's spent chasing validation. This new standard doesn't photograph well, but it sleeps better at night. You stop asking, how do I look compared to everyone else? And start asking, does my money serve the life I want to live? That question changes everything. Imagine, just for a moment, that comparison disappeared. No feeds, no benchmarks, no invisible scorecards. Your income stays the same. Your life stays the same. Only the constant measuring is gone. Would you still feel poor? Or would the pressure quietly dissolve without an audience? That question lingers because it has no clean answer. It forces you to separate money from meaning. Maybe poverty, at least the kind most people feel, isn't always about scarcity. Maybe it's about context and who you're standing next to. The unsettling part is also the hopeful one. If comparison creates the feeling, perspective can soften it. And that leaves you with a choice. Not about how much you earn, but how you decide what enough really means.